The girl pulled her sleeves down when he looked at her, like she was hiding something worse than rope burns. The girl carried water across the yard at dusk, buckets sloshing heavy against her thin legs. Too thin. Silas Harden watched from the barn door, his hands still greasy from mending harness leather. She moved like a shadow, head down, shoulders in, no sound but the scrape of bucket handles. Summer heat hadn't broken in 4 months. Everything was dust and dying grass. The girl wore sleeves that covered her wrists completely, fabric dark with sweat. When the left bucket slipped, she jerked her arm to catch it. The sleeve rode up. Silas saw it then, pale lines against sun-scorched skin, scars, rope burns maybe, or worse. She looked up, saw him watching, pulled the sleeve down fast, kept walking. Silas opened his mouth, closed it, turned back into the barn. Behind her, the windmill stood perfectly still against the orange sky. No wind, no mercy, just heat and silence, and the slow drag of buckets toward the house. Delgado showed up 3 months back with a burn scar on his arm, and a look in his eyes like he'd seen this before. The drifter arrived on a Tuesday, leading a mule that looked as tired as he did. Dark hair and a braid, Yaqui features, maybe 35, walked quiet, didn't ask permission to water his animal at the trough. Silas came out of the house, thumbs hooked in his belt. "Help you?" "Looking for work." The man's voice was flat, direct. "Heard you got horses need breaking." "Who told you that?" "Man in town. Said you pay fair." Silas looked him over. Didn't trust drifters as a rule, especially not Indian ones. But Dutch had quit last week and the fence line was falling apart faster than he could fix it alone. 2 weeks, Silas said. $1 a day, meals included, sleep in the bunkhouse. Fair enough. The man extended his hand. Delgado. Just Delgado. Just Delgado. Silas shook. The man's grip was calloused, steady. Noticed a thick burn scar running up his left forearm. Old. Looked like rope or wire. Held too long. "Start tomorrow," Silas said. "Dutch'll show you around." Delgado nodded, led his mule toward the barn. That's when he saw the girl. Emmy was carrying feed sacks from the storehouse to the chicken coop. Bags half her weight. Sun straight overhead. No hat, sleeves still long despite the heat. She stumbled once, caught herself, kept moving. Delgado stopped, watched her. Dutch came up beside him, older white man with a belly and a mustache. "That's the Mexican girl. Boss took her in when her folks died crossing the desert. Reverend Cade's teaching her right from wrong." "And right from wrong," Delgado repeated. Discipline and scripture. Girl needed structure. Dutch spat tobacco juice into the dirt. Reverend's real particular about correction. Delgado's jaw tightened, said nothing. 3 days later, it happened. Noon. Heat so thick it bent the air. Delgado was mending fence near the well when he heard the thud. Emmy had collapsed. He was running before Dutch even turned around. She lay crumpled in the dirt, feed sack spilled beside her, one arm twisted under her body, eyes closed, breathing shallow. Delgado dropped to his knees, touched her shoulder. "Hey, kid, you with me?" No response. He slid his arms under her, light as kindling, and lifted her into the barn's shade. Laid her down on a pile of empty burlap sacks. Her pulse was fast, skin burning. Dutch appeared in the doorway. "She okay?" "Get water, now." Dutch hesitated. "Boss ain't gonna Get water." Dutch left. Silas arrived 2 minutes later, moving fast but not running. Looked down at Emmy, then at Delgado. "What happened?" "Heat took her." Delgado didn't look up. He'd wet his bandana in the horse trough, was pressing it against her forehead. "How long's she been working out there?" "Since morning." "In this?" "She's got chores." Delgado finally looked at him. "She's 14, Jefe." "I know how old she is. Then you know she needs water and shade, not a goddamn feed sack in 100-degree sun." Silas's face went hard. "Watch your mouth. Watch your workers." They stared at each other. Then Emmy stirred. Her eyes opened, unfocused, scared. Saw Delgado leaning over her and tried to scramble back. "Easy," Delgado said. "You're okay. You fainted." And she looked past him to Silas. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'll finish." "You'll rest," Silas said, but his voice was tight, defensive. "Maria'll bring you food." "I can work." "I said rest." Emmy's eyes dropped. "Yes, sir." As Delgado helped her sit up, her sleeve fell back. He saw them then. The scars. Pale rope burns circling both wrists like bracelets. Some old, some newer. One still healing, skin raw and peeling. His hand froze. Emmy saw him looking, yanked the sleeve down. "I'm fine." Delgado's voice went quiet. "Dangerous." "Who did that?" "Nobody. I'm clumsy." That's not clumsy." Silas stepped forward. "She said she's fine." Delgado stood slowly, putting himself between Silas and the girl. "You see those marks, Jefe?" She fell, caught herself on barbed wire. "That's rope." "I know what it is." Do you? Silas's face was stone. You're here to work, not ask questions. You got a problem with that? There's the road. Delgado held his stare, then nodded once. Sure, boss, no problem. But his eyes said different. Emmy stayed in the barn, while the men went back to work. Delgado took the long way to the fence line, passing the chapel behind the main house. Small building, whitewashed adobe, bell tower with a single brass bell. The door was open. Inside, a man in a black coat knelt at the altar. Clean-shaven, wire glasses, hands folded, praying. Delgado kept walking. He worked until dusk. When he came back to wash up, Emmy was sitting outside the barn on an overturned bucket, holding a tin cup of water with both hands, sleeves still down. Delgado sat on a hay bale a few feet away, didn't speak, just pulled out his knife and a piece of wood, started carving. Emmy watched him, didn't move. After a long silence, "You're going to tell him." Delgado didn't look up. Tell who what? The Reverend. That I fell, that I was weak. Why would I do that? Because everyone does. Delgado paused his carving. Who's the Reverend? Emmy's voice went smaller. He teaches me. Bible, reading, work ethic. Says I need correction. Correction. To be good. You good now? I'm trying. Delgado looked at her then. Really looked. She was staring at her hands, fingers picking at the cup rim. Where is this Reverend? He asked. The chapel. He stays there. He the one ties you up? Emmy flinched like he'd hit her. It's not. It's discipline. For when you're what? Lazy, disobedient, ungrateful. The words came out automatic, memorized. The sun teaches patience. Delgado's knife stopped moving. The sun, he said. Yes. How long? I don't. How long do you stand in the sun? Emmy wouldn't answer, just pulled her sleeves down tighter. Delgado looked at the chapel, then at his own arm, the burn scar running wrist to elbow. His sister's face flashed in his memory. 9 years old, tied to a post at the boarding school. Sun beating down, teachers calling it character building. She'd died in 3 days. He turned back to Emmy. You tell him you fainted. No? Good, don't. But if he finds out, he won't, not from me. Delgado went back to carving. And you didn't fall. You got heat sick because you were working too hard. That ain't weak. That's just human. Emmy stared at him, like she didn't believe anyone could say that. After a minute, she whispered, What are you making? He held up the piece of wood, rough bird shape, wings half formed. Don't know yet, he said, in something that flies, maybe. Emmy almost smiled. Then the chapel bell rang, single, sharp tone. The smile died. She stood, set down the cup, and walked toward the sound without another word. Delgado watched her go, looked at the bird in his hand, then at his scar again. Behind him, Silas stood in the barn doorway, half hidden in shadow, watching, saying nothing. The windmill started to turn, first breeze in days. Too late for Emmy, she was already inside the chapel. Maria gave Emmy extra cornbread when Silas wasn't looking, and for the first time in months, the girl almost smiled. The next morning, Silas told Emmy to rest. Didn't ask, ordered. Said he didn't want another collapse on his property. Emmy stood in the kitchen doorway, uncertain. I have chores. Dutch'll handle it. But the Reverend says, I said rest. She nodded, eyes down. Yes, sir. Silas left before she could see his face. Maria took over from there. The cook was older, Mexican, with gray streaking her black hair and hands that knew how to heal. She'd been at the ranch since before Silas's daughter died. Knew how to move through silence. She brought Emmy to the small room off the kitchen. Used to be storage, now had a cot and a wooden chair. Maria gestured at the bed. Sit, mija. Emmy sat. Maria disappeared, came back with a basin of cool water, clean rags, and a jar of salve that smelled like desert herbs. Set them on the floor, knelt in front of Emmy. Your wrists, Maria said quietly. Emmy pulled back. I'm fine. Let me see. It's nothing. Maria waited, just looked at her with eyes that had seen too much to be fooled. Emmy's hands started shaking. Slowly, she pushed up her sleeves. The scars were worse in daylight. Rope burns, layered on rope burns, some old and white, some fresh and red, one still weeping clear fluid. The kind of damage that came from hours, not minutes, from weeks, not days. Maria's face didn't change, didn't gasp, didn't curse, just dipped a rag in the water and began cleaning the wounds, touch gentle as prayer. How long? Maria asked. 3 months, since I came here. The Reverend? Emmy nodded. Maria worked in silence, wrapping Emmy's wrists in clean cloth. When she finished, she sat back on her heels. You tell Senor Hardin? He knows. He knows? Emmy pulled her sleeves down over the bandages. He hired the Reverend to teach me discipline. Maria's jaw tightened. She stood, picked up the basin. You eat today? Not yet. Then come. I'll fix you something. In the kitchen, Maria set a plate in front of Emmy. Eggs, beans, cornbread with butter. More food than Emmy usually saw in 2 days. I can't. This is too much. Eat. Emmy ate. Slowly at first, then faster, like she was afraid someone would take it away. Maria watched from the stove, humming something low and old, a song Emmy's mother used to sing. Emmy's eyes watered. She looked down at her plate, kept chewing. When Silas passed by the kitchen window, Maria gave Emmy another piece of cornbread, put a finger to her lips. Emmy almost smiled. Evening came cool, first break in the heat all week. Delgado sat on the porch carving, wood shavings curling at his feet. The wooden bird was taking shape now, wings spread, head turned like it was looking back at something. Emmy appeared in the doorway, hesitated. Delgado didn't look up. You're allowed to sit. I don't want to bother. You're not. She sat on the far end of the porch, back against the post, watched him work. Long silence. Comfortable, though, the kind that didn't need filling. Finally, Delgado held up the bird. Getting there. Emmy leaned forward. The wings are crooked. Yeah. Why? Real birds got crooked wings, too. Nothing flies perfect. Emmy tilted her head, studying it. It's still pretty. Pretty enough. He set down his knife, extended the bird toward her. Want it? She stared. You made it for me. Figure you could use something that flies. Emmy took it carefully, like it might break, turned it over in her bandaged hands. Why? Why what? Why are you nice to me? Delgado went back to cleaning his knife. You ask that a lot? Most people aren't. Then most people are idiots. Emmy's mouth twitched, almost a smile. The wings really are crooked. So's the world, Hermana. This time she did smile. Small, quick, gone before it finished forming, but real. Silas was watching from inside the house. Through the window, seeing Emmy's face change. He couldn't remember the last time she'd smiled. Months, maybe. Maybe never, not since she'd arrived. Something cold settled in his chest. The chapel bell rang, single sharp note cutting through the evening. Emmy's smile died like a candle snuffed out. She stood, setting the wooden bird down carefully on the porch railing. I have to go. Delgado's voice hardened. Where? The Reverend calls. So I have to go. Says who? Emmy looked at him, then at the chapel. He teaches me. I have to. You don't have to do anything. You don't understand? I understand plenty. Delgado stood. You don't want to go, you don't go. It's not that simple. It is. Emmy's voice dropped to a whisper. If I don't go, it's worse. He'll tell Senor Hardin I'm disobedient, and then... She stopped, pulled her sleeves down. I just have to go. She walked down the steps, across the yard toward the chapel. Delgado watched her until she disappeared inside. Then he turned. Silas stood in the doorway behind him. You gonna stop her? Delgado asked. Silas's face was unreadable. Not my place to question a man of God. What man of God? Delgado spat into the dirt. That what you call him? He's teaching her right from wrong. He's breaking her. You don't know that. I seen her wrists, Jefe. I know exactly what he's doing. Silas's hands curled into fists at his sides. The Reverend knows scripture, knows discipline. Girl needed structure after her parents died. She needs protection, not a rope and a post. Well, watch your mouth. Or what, you'll send me away? Delgado stepped closer. Fine, send me. But you'll still know, you'll still hear her screaming at night and tell yourself it's discipline. You'll still see those scars and pretend it's for her own good. Get off my porch. Whose place is it then? Delgado didn't move. If it ain't yours, whose place is it to stop him? Silas didn't answer, just walked back inside. The door closed. Delgado stood alone on the porch, the wooden bird sitting on the railing between him and the empty space where Emmy had been. From the chapel, nothing, no sound, no scream, just silence and the windmill turning slow in the evening wind. You still keep the lamp burning at night, Delgado said, not looking at him. Who you trying to find? Morning. Delgado was mending the corral fence when he saw it, the rope, hemp, frayed at the ends, coiled and hanging from a post inside the barn. He'd walked past it twice before without noticing. This time, sunlight hit it different. He stopped, stared. It was the same type they'd used at the boarding school, same thickness, same way the fibers caught skin and didn't let go. Delgado set down his tools, walked over, lifted the rope off its hook, heavy, stiff in places. He turned it in his hands, and there, dried into the weave, dark brown against the tan, blood, not a lot. Just enough to know, his jaw clenched. The rope had been used recently, used hard. He remembered his sister, 9 years old. They'd tied her to a post outside the school building for speaking Yaqui during lessons. 3 hours in the sun, then 6, then all day. She'd stopped crying after the first hour, stopped moving after the second. By evening, her skin was blistered. By morning, she had fever. By the third day, she was dead. The teachers called it corrective education. His parents called it murder. He called it something he'd never forget. Delgado looked at the rope in his hands, at the blood dried into it, at the barn door, beyond which Emmy was probably already working despite Silas's order to rest. He didn't put the rope back. Took it with him. Evening. Silas sat alone on the porch, lamp burning beside him even though the sun hadn't fully set. Did this every night, lit the lamp early, let it burn late. Delgado climbed the steps, the rope coiled over his shoulder, didn't speak. Just dropped the rope on the boards between them. It landed with a soft thud. Silas looked at it, then at Delgado. Found that in the barn, Delgado said. So? So you know what it is? Silas's face was stone. It's rope. It's got blood on it. Probably from moving cattle. Equipment gets... It's her blood, Jefe. Delgado sat down on the opposite end of the porch. Long silence between them. Then, you still keep the lamp burning at night. Who you trying to find? Silas stiffened. That's none of your business. Everything on this ranch seems to be none of my business. Delgado leaned back against the post. My sister used to be scared of the dark. Kept a candle by her bed, even in summer. Silas didn't respond. She died at a white man's school. Delgado continued, voice flat. They said they were going to teach her right from wrong, teach her English, manners, how to be civilized. He paused. Guess they taught her something. Taught her how to die, quiet. Silas's hands tightened on his knees. They tied her to a post, Delgado said, in the sun, for speaking Yaqui. Said it was discipline, said it was for her own good. Long silence. Finally, Silas spoke, voice rough. I had a daughter. Delgado waited. Fever took her, 7 years back. She was 8. Silas stared at the lamp flame. I watched her burn up from the inside. Couldn't stop it. Couldn't do a damn thing but sit there and watch her die. That why you don't look at the girl? I look at her. No. Delgado's voice was quiet but sharp. You look past her, like if you don't see her, she ain't real. Silas said nothing. You heard her scream, Delgado said. Not a question. Silas's jaw worked, didn't answer. You heard her scream, Delgado repeated. That night, 2 weeks ago, I was in the bunkhouse. Heard it clear. Girl's voice, coming from the chapel, begging. He leaned forward. I know you heard it too, Jefe. I seen that lamp burning brighter every night since. I heard noise, Silas said finally. Could have been anything. It wasn't anything. It was her. The Reverend was conducting a lesson. A lesson. Delgado's voice went cold. That what you call it when a child screams for mercy? Silas stood. You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about. Delgado stayed seated. I stayed here for her, Silas turned. What? You asked me why I took the job 2 weeks ago when I showed up. Delgado met his eyes. Wasn't for the money, wasn't for the work. Then why? Because I heard her. Delgado gestured toward the chapel. I was passing through, camping by the creek south of your property, middle of the night, heard screaming. Followed the sound, saw the chapel, saw your ranch, heard her voice. He paused. Next morning, I came looking for work, been here ever since. You stayed to watch her. I stayed because somebody had to. Silas's face went white. You had no right. You're right. I didn't. Delgado stood now, slow. But I got a sister in the ground who nobody protected. So, yeah, I stayed, and I'm still here. She's not your concern. Then whose is she? Delgado stepped closer. You heard her scream, and kept that lamp burning instead of walking 50 feet to check on her. Maria sees the scars and feeds her in secret like it's a crime to show kindness. Dutch knows what's happening and calls it discipline. He picked up the rope, held it between them. So whose concern is she, Jefe? Silas stared at the rope, at the blood dried into the fibers, at the evidence he'd been ignoring for months. I thought, his voice broke, started again. When my daughter died, I promised I'd never let myself care like that again. Never let myself... And he trailed off. So you don't see her, Delgado finished. Emmy, you look past her because if you really saw her, you'd have to care. And if you care, I might lose her too. So you let her burn instead. The words hung in the air between them. Silas sat down heavily, looked at his hands. What do you want me to do? I want you to open your goddamn eyes. Delgado dropped the rope at Silas's feet. I want you to see what's happening 50 feet from your house. I want you to stop pretending that lamp's gonna bring your daughter back, because it won't. But that girl in there, he pointed toward the house. She's alive, right now, and she needs someone to give a damn. Silas picked up the rope, felt the weight of it, the stiffness where blood had dried. The Reverend's been here 3 months, he said quietly. I know, 3 months, and I never asked. He stopped, couldn't finish. From the chapel, the bell began to ring. Evening prayers. Both men looked toward the sound. Then they looked at each other. You gonna stop her this time? Delgado asked. Silas stared at the chapel, at the rope in his hands, at the lamp burning beside him, lit for a daughter who'd been dead 7 years, while another girl suffered in silence 50 feet away. I don't know, he said, and that, Delgado knew, was the first honest thing Silas had said all night. The bell stopped ringing. The windmill turned, slow and steady, and Emmy walked toward the chapel alone. The rope sat on Silas's desk like an accusation, and he couldn't throw it away. Morning. Silas came into his office to find the rope coiled in the center of his desk. No note, no explanation. Just the rope. He stood in the doorway, staring at it. The blood was more visible in the lamplight. Dark streaks where the hemp had abraded skin, held pressure, drawn fluid. He knew that rope. Had seen it in the barn 100 times. Never asked what it was for. Never wanted to know. Now he couldn't look away. Footsteps behind him. Delgado appeared in the doorway, arms crossed. Figured you should keep it, Delgado said, seeing as you paid for it. Silas's voice came out rough. I never told him to use that. No, you just told him to correct her. Correction isn't what? Delgado stepped into the room. Isn't supposed to draw blood? Isn't supposed to leave scars? What exactly did you think he was doing in that chapel, Jeffe? I thought discipline, structure, not... Silas gestured at the rope. Couldn't finish. You thought what you wanted to think. Delgado's voice was flat, hard. Easier that way. I didn't know he was... Yes, you did. The words landed like a fist. Silas turned. I didn't... You heard her scream. Delgado moved closer. 2 weeks ago, middle of the night, I was in the bunkhouse, and I heard it clear. You telling me you didn't? Silas's jaw worked, said nothing. I seen that lamp burning every night since, Delgado continued. Seen you sitting out there, not sleeping, not moving. You heard her, and it's eating you alive. You don't know what you're talking about. Then tell me I'm wrong. Delgado's eyes were steel. Tell me you didn't hear a 14-year-old girl begging for mercy from your chapel, and I'll walk away right now. Silence. Long, suffocating silence. Finally, Silas spoke, voice barely above a whisper. I heard her. Delgado went still. I heard her, Silas repeated. His hands were shaking. Twice. First time was 6-7 weeks ago, late. I was checking the barn. Heard crying from the chapel, went to the door, heard her voice. He stopped, swallowed. She was saying, please, over and over. Please, not the sun again. Please, I'll be good. And you walked away. I told myself it was discipline, that the Reverend knew best, that she, his voice cracked, that she needed to learn. And the second time, Silas closed his eyes. 2 weeks ago, like you said, middle of the night, screaming this time, not just crying. I got halfway to the chapel, stood outside the door, could hear her begging, could hear him quoting scripture. He opened his eyes, looked at Delgado, and I walked away. Why? Because Silas's voice broke completely, started again, quieter. My daughter, when she was dying, fever, she screamed like that, begged me to make it stop, and I couldn't. I sat there holding her hand while she burned up from the inside, and I couldn't do a goddamn thing. Delgado's expression didn't change. So when I heard Emmy scream, Silas sat down heavily in his chair. If I opened that door, I'd have to see, and if I saw, I'd have to admit I'd let it happen. Again, another child burning, and me doing nothing. You weren't doing nothing, Delgado said quietly. You were choosing. You chose not to see. It's not the same. It's exactly the same. Delgado picked up the rope, held it between them. Your daughter died of fever. Nothing you could do. But Emmy? He dropped the rope on the desk. You could have opened that door. You could have stopped him. You chose not to. Silas stared at the rope, really looked at it now. When he'd first bought it, just rope, tool, neutral, something for the barn, for the horses, for ranch work. When Delgado found it yesterday, evidence, proof something was wrong. Now it was a weapon, an instrument of torture, and he'd paid for it, hired the man who used it, heard the screams, and walked away. The rope had always been the rope. He was what had changed. Or maybe he'd always been this, and just hadn't wanted to see. I thought if I didn't look, he said, voice hollow, it wouldn't be real. If I didn't see her, I couldn't lose her. So you let her burn anyway. Silas picked up the rope, felt the weight, the stiffness where blood had dried, the way it coiled naturally, ready to bind again. The Reverend said she needed correction, he said, but the words sounded weak even to himself. Said she was willful, disobedient, said the son would teach her patience, humility. The son taught my sister how to die, Delgado cut in. That what you wanted for Emmy? No, God no. Then why'd you let him keep doing it? I don't know. Yeah, you do. Silas set the rope down like it burned him. Couldn't hold it anymore. Outside, thunder rolled, first sound of weather in months, storm finally coming. He's a man of God, Silas said weakly. I thought, he's a man who ties children in the sun and calls it holy. Delgado's voice was ice. And you're a man who pays him to do it. That's exactly what you are, Jefe. The words sat between them like a verdict. Silas looked at his hands. Calloused from work, strong from years of ranching, hands that should have opened a door, should have cut a rope, should have done something. What do you want from me? He asked. Nothing, not anymore. Delgado moved toward the door. I'm leaving in the morning, taking her with me if she'll come. When Silas's head snapped up. You can't just watch me. She's under my care. Your care. Delgado's laugh was bitter. That what you call this? I'm responsible for her. You're responsible for nothing. Delgado stopped in the doorway, turned back. You gave that up the first time you heard her scream and walked away. You want to keep pretending you're protecting her? Fine, but I'm done watching. Where will you take her? Anywhere that ain't here. She's got nowhere else. She's got me, Delgado said. And that's more than she's got from you. Silas stood. I can fix this. I can talk to the Reverend, tell him to stop. 3 months too late, Jefe. I'll send him away, today, right now. And then what? You think that rope disappears? You think her scars heal because you finally grew a conscience? Delgado shook his head. Some things can't be fixed. You just gotta live with them. Thunder again, closer, wind picking up outside. I didn't mean for this to happen, Silas said. Yeah. Delgado looked at him one last time. You did. You just didn't mean to have to see it. He left. Silas stood alone in his office, the rope coiled on his desk, the lamp burning even though morning light filled the room. Outside, the windmill spun faster. The weather vane swung south. The first drops of rain hit the windows. Hard, angry, too late to save the dying crops, too late to wash anything clean. Silas picked up the rope one more time, held it, felt every fiber, every stain, every mark that said, you knew, you knew, you knew. He tried to throw it away, couldn't. Tried to put it back in the drawer. Couldn't do that either. Finally, he just set it down and walked out. Left it there on the desk, coiled and waiting. An accusation that wouldn't leave. Behind him, the lamp kept burning, and the storm finally broke. Emmy was gone by sunrise, and Silas finally understood what he'd lost. Not her, but himself. Silas woke before dawn. Something felt wrong. The house was too quiet. He dressed, went to the kitchen. Maria wasn't there yet. Coffee wasn't made. The stove was cold. Then he saw Emmy's door standing open. He walked over slowly, looked inside. The bed was made. Hospital corners, perfect and tight, the kind of precise you only learn from someone who punished mistakes. Her blanket folded at the foot. Pillow fluffed, floor swept. The room looked like no one had ever lived there. On the pillow, centered carefully, the wooden bird Delgado had carved, wings crooked, head turned back. She'd left it behind. Silas picked it up. The wood was smooth from being held, touched, kept close. He could see where her fingers had worn grooves in the wings. She'd kept it, carried it, then left it here for him to find. He set it down like it weighed 100 pounds. Walked through the house calling her name. No answer. Checked the kitchen, the porch, the yard. Nothing. Went to the bunkhouse. Delgado's bunk was stripped, his few possessions gone. The mule missing from the corral, they'd left together. Before dawn, while Silas was still sleeping, he went to the barn, to the corner where Emmy used to sleep before Maria gave her the room. Before she'd been moved into the house, like that made it better. The corner was swept clean, not a trace, just packed dirt and empty space. He stood there for a long time, staring at nothing. Then he went back to his office. The rope was still on his desk, right where he'd left it. Only thing she'd left behind besides the bird. Evidence and absence. He picked up the rope, held it, felt the weight of what he'd done pressed into every fiber. Bootsteps on the porch, heavy, confident. The door opened without knocking. Reverend Josiah Cade stood in the doorway, black coat buttoned despite the heat, wire-rimmed glasses catching the morning light. Mr. Harden, where is the girl? Silas looked up slowly. Gone. Gone where? Don't know. Don't care. Cade's face hardened. She was entrusted to my spiritual care. You had no right. Get off my land. Cade blinked. Excuse me? Silas stood, set the rope down on the desk between them. I said get off my land. Mr. Harden, I don't think you understand the gravity. No, you don't understand. Silas's voice was quiet, deadly. You tied a child to a post in the sun. For hours. You call that God's work? Discipline is mercy, Mr. Harden. The rod of correction. Don't. Silas moved around the desk. Don't you dare quote scripture at me. Cade drew himself up. I was hired to provide moral education. The girl was willful, disobedient. She was 14, which is precisely why she needed firm guidance. Spare the rod. She's got rope burns on both wrists. Silas picked up the rope, held it up. This is what you used. This. Blood dried into the fibers. How many times, Reverend? How many times did you tie her out there? Cade's jaw tightened. As many times as was necessary for her correction. Correction, Silas's voice shook. You tortured her. I saved her soul. You broke her. Silas threw the rope at Cade's feet, and I let you. Cade stared at the rope, then back at Silas. You hired me. You gave me authority. I know what I did. And then, you know you're complicit in this. Whatever happened to that girl, you allowed it. You sanctioned it. Cade's voice was cold, precise. You wanted her corrected, Mr. Harden. I simply provided the correction you lacked the courage to administer yourself. The words landed like a blade. Because they were true, Silas had wanted someone else to do it, to make Emmy obedient, quiet, grateful, to make her not scream, not remind him of his daughter dying, not force him to feel anything. He'd hired Cade to be the bad man so Silas could pretend to be good. Get out, Silas said. Mr. Harden, get out of my house, off my land, out of this territory if you're smart. Silas stepped closer. Because if I see you again, I won't be responsible for what I do. Cade's face went white, but he held his ground. I answer to a higher authority than you. Then go answer to him. Just do it somewhere else. They stared at each other. Finally, Cade bent down, picked up the rope, held it. You'll need this. For the next child, you're too cowardly to discipline yourself. He dropped it at Silas's feet and walked out. The door slammed. Silas stood there, looking at the rope on the floor. Cade was right, about all of it. He sat down on the porch, same place Delgado had sat, same place Emmy had sat with her wooden bird. Almost smiling, now empty, the rope lay in his hands. He couldn't remember picking it up again. The sun was fully up now, heat already building. Another day of drought, of dust, of nothing growing. He thought about his daughter, Sarah, 8 years old, brown hair, gap in her front teeth. Fever had taken her fast, 3 days, start to finish. He'd held her hand the whole time. Felt her burning up, watched her eyes go distant. She'd begged him to make it stop. Papa, please, it hurts, make it stop. And he'd sat there useless saying, I know, baby, I know, I'm so sorry. Couldn't do a damn thing but watch her die. So when Emmy came, another girl, another chance, he'd built walls. Told himself, don't get close, don't care, don't let her matter. And when he heard her screaming from the chapel 6 weeks ago, he'd walked to the door and stopped. Stood there in the dark, listening to her beg. Please, not the sun again. Please, I'll be good. I promise I'll be good. And he'd thought, if I open this door, I'll see. And if I see, I'll have to admit, I'm failing another child. So he'd walked away. Then 2 weeks ago, middle of the night, louder this time, real screaming, not just crying. He'd gotten closer that time. Put his hand on the door handle. Heard Cade's voice inside, calm and cold. The sun teaches patience, child. You must learn to endure. And an Emmy, please, please, I can't, it hurts, please. His hand on the door handle. All he had to do was open it. He'd walked away. Told himself it was discipline. That Cade knew best. That it wasn't his place to interfere with a man of God's work. All lies. The truth, he was scared. Scared of caring, scared of losing, scared of standing in that chapel and seeing another child in pain he couldn't fix. Except this time, he could have fixed it. He'd just chosen not to. Silas looked at the rope in his hands, at the blood, at the wear patterns, where it had been tied tight, pulled against, held for hours. He tried to pray, couldn't form the words, tried to breathe, couldn't fill his lungs, just sat there holding the rope, the sun climbing higher, the heat pressing down like judgment. Senor. Well, Maria's voice, soft, careful, he looked up. She stood at the edge of the porch, hands folded, face unreadable. I know she's gone, Silas said, voice rough. See. Did you know they were leaving? I suspected. Why didn't you tell me? Maria's eyes held his. Would you have stopped her? He couldn't answer. She sat down beside him, looked at the rope in his hands, said nothing for a long time. Finally, I heard her, senor. At night, from the chapel. I know. You heard too. Yes. But you didn't go. No. The word came out broken. More silence. Then Maria reached over, took the rope from his hands, set it aside. Mija told me something before she left, Maria said. She said, tell him I don't blame him. And Silas's head snapped up. What? She said those words exactly. Tell Senor Hardin I don't blame him for not stopping it. Tell him I understand he was scared. Maria's voice was steady, but her eyes were wet. She said, tell him I forgive him. The words hit Silas like a fist to the chest. No. His voice cracked. No, she can't, she shouldn't, but she did. I don't deserve, I know. Maria's voice was gentle but merciless. She knows too, but she forgave you anyway. Silas bent forward, elbows on his knees, head in his hands, his whole body shaking. I heard her, he whispered. I heard her screaming and I walked away. Twice. I walked away twice. Maria. I know, senor. I'm no better than him, than Cade. I let it happen. I paid him to... He couldn't finish. Maria stood, looked down at him. Dios lo perdone, senor. God forgive you. Then quieter, porque ella ya lo hizo. Because she already has. She went inside. Silas sat alone on the porch, the rope beside him, the wooden bird on the railing where Emmy used to sit. The lamp burned behind him on the small table. Had burned every night for 7 years. For Sarah. For his dead daughter. A light searching for someone who'd never come home. He stood, walked over to it, stared at the flame. Then he blew it out. First time in 7 years. Just out. The smoke curled up into the morning light and disappeared. He didn't relight it. The windmill had stopped turning. No wind. Total stillness. Then slowly, it started again. Different this time. Not frantic, just steady. Turning, because that's what windmills do. Silas looked at the horizon. The desert stretched endlessly. Emmy was out there somewhere. With Delgado. Moving south, probably. Toward the border, toward safety, toward anywhere that wasn't here. And he'd never see her again. Never get to say sorry. Never get to tell her he hurt her. That he knew that he was the coward she'd needed a hero. She'd forgiven him. And he'd never get to thank her for it, or ask her how. The sun climbed higher. The heat pressed down. The day went on like nothing had changed, but everything had. Silas picked up the rope one last time, looked at it, then set it down. He couldn't throw it away. That would be too easy. He'd keep it, where he could see it, where it would remind him every day of what he'd done, of what he was. Behind him, the lamp sat dark and cold, and for the first time in 7 years, Silas Hardin stopped searching for the dead and faced what he'd done to the living. The desert had never felt bigger than it did the day he rode out alone, looking for something he didn't deserve to find. 3 days passed. Silas couldn't stay at the ranch. Every corner held her absence. The kitchen where Maria had fed her, the porch where she'd almost smiled, the chapel, empty now, door hanging open, no one inside but dust and silence. He told Dutch he was checking fence lines south. Packed a bedroll, canteen, jerky. Saddled his horse before dawn. Really, he was looking for her. Knew they'd gone south, toward the border, toward Mexico, where Delgado could disappear and Emmy could start over. 3 days head start, maybe more. Trail would be cold by now. Didn't matter. He had to try. The desert stretched endless. Flat scrubland broken by saguaro and creosote. Heat shimmer making the horizon waver like water. No clouds. Just sun, relentless and high. Same sun that had burned Emmy. Silas rode through it without stopping for shade. Let it beat down on his head, his shoulders, his neck. Let the heat press into him until his shirt stuck to his back and his lips cracked. Good. Let it hurt. Let him feel what she felt. He rode past the creek where Delgado had been camping when he first heard Emmy scream. Past the ridge, where you could see the ranch if you look back. Past the last fence post that marked the edge of his property. Then just desert, miles of it, empty. He found their camp around noon. Cold fire pit, flattened wool grass where they'd slept. Tracks leading south, already half filled with blown sand. They were long gone. He sat his horse, staring at the dead fire. They'd been here. Emmy had been here, safe, with someone who actually protected her, and he'd never catch them, didn't deserve to. He rode another hour anyway, then another, until the sun was directly overhead and the heat made him dizzy. Finally stopped, dismounted, let his horse drink from his canteen while he sat in the thin shade of a Palo Verde tree. The landscape was brutal, beautiful in its way, but unforgiving. Nothing soft about it. Everything here survived by being hard, or by knowing when to hide. Emmy had been soft, young, innocent, and he'd let her be broken in the sun. Night came cold. Desert always did that, burned you during the day, froze you at night. Silas built a fire, sat cross-legged beside it, staring into the flames. His daughter's face flickered in the coals. Sarah, 8 years old, brown eyes looking up at him, trusting him to make the fever stop. Papa, it hurts. I know, baby. I'm so sorry. Make it stop, please. But he couldn't. Could only hold her hand while she burned up from the inside, while the fever climbed and climbed until her skin was like touching a stove, until her eyes went unfocused, until he'd been helpless, truly helpless. And when Emmy came, when another girl needed him, he'd convinced himself it was the same, that he was helpless again, that caring would only lead to losing. But that was a lie. He could have opened the chapel door, could have fired Cade the first week, could have checked on Emmy, asked how she was being taught, looked at her wrists before Delgado forced him to see. He wasn't helpless. He was scared. Scared of the weight of another child's life in his hands. Scared of failing again. Scared of standing in front of her pain and not being able to fix it. So he'd looked away. Let someone else do the hard thing. Let Cade be the monster so Silas could pretend his hands were clean. But they weren't clean. They were stained with every scream he didn't answer, every rope burn he didn't prevent. Every night she went to bed hurting, while he lit his lamp and searched for a daughter who'd been dead 7 years. Silas pulled the wooden bird from his pocket. He'd brought it with him without thinking. Just grabbed it off Emmy's pillow before leaving. The wings were crooked. Delgado had said that on purpose. Nothing flies perfect. He turned it over in his hands. Could see where Emmy's fingers had worn the wood smooth. She'd held this every night, probably. Something kind in a world that had been cruel, and she'd left it for him, along with forgiveness he'd never asked for and didn't deserve. He set the bird on the ground beside the fire, watched the flames reflect off the rough carved feathers. A coyote called in the distance. His horse shifted, nervous. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of creosote and dust. Silas looked up at the stars, thousands of them, cold and distant, watching, judging, indifferent. I heard her, he said to no one. To the desert. To God, maybe, if God was listening. I heard her, and I walked away. His voice was rough, cracking. I told myself I was protecting myself, but I was just a coward. The stars didn't answer. The fire crackled. She forgave me, he said, quieter now, and I don't know how to live with that. Silence, then slowly, but I got to try. He sat there a long time, silhouette against the fire, holding the wooden bird, staring at nothing. Man confronting his own emptiness. Eventually he lay down, didn't sleep, just watched the stars wheel overhead, cold and clean and honest. Exit to redemption. Morning came gray and cool. First hint of weather changing. Silas saddled up, looked south one more time, the direction Emmy and Delgado had gone. He could keep riding, could try to find them, could try to explain, apologize, beg forgiveness in person. But what would that give her? More pain, more reminders, more of the man who'd failed her. No, the kindest thing he could do was let her go. Let her be free of him, free of the ranch, free of the memory of that chapel and that rope and those long hours in the sun. But there was something else he could do. He turned his horse north, back toward the ranch. He had a chapel to tear down, a rope to burn, a place to make clean so no one else could be hurt there. Wouldn't undo what he'd done. Wouldn't earn forgiveness. He already had that, undeserved. But it was something, a small thing, the only thing he had left. The ride back was longer than the ride out, always was. When he crested the ridge and saw the ranch below, buildings small and dusty, windmill turning slow, he felt nothing, no relief, no homecoming, just work to be done. He rode down into the valley as the sun climbed higher. Behind him, the desert stretched empty and endless. Emmy was out there somewhere, free, safe, far from him. And that, he thought, was exactly how it should be. The wooden bird sat in his saddlebag. He'd keep it, not as forgiveness, not as absolution, as a reminder of what mercy looked like when you didn't deserve it, and what responsibility looked like when you'd already failed. He burned the rope at dawn, and when Emmy finally looked at him, she didn't flinch. Silas got back to the ranch at dusk, dismounted, didn't go inside, walked straight to the chapel. The door was still open, had been for days. Wind had blown dust across the floor, covered the benches, settled on the small altar where Cade used to kneel. Silas stood in the doorway, looked at it. 4 walls, roof, wooden cross on the wall. Should have felt holy, just felt empty. He walked inside. The air was stale, hot. Behind the altar, a door led to the small back room where Cade had slept. Silas pushed it open. Bare cot, trunk with books, Bible, scripture commentaries, theological texts. On the wall, a handwritten sign in careful script, "Spare the rod, spoil the child." Silas tore it down. In the corner, a leather satchel. He opened it. Inside, more rope, a leather strap, a riding crop, tools of correction. He gathered them all. The satchel, the books that justified cruelty, the sign. Carried them outside. Then he went back in, looked at the wooden cross on the wall, considered taking it down, decided against it. Cross wasn't the problem, men who used it as a weapon were. But behind the altar, he found what he was looking for, the iron ring, bolted into the adobe wall, low to the ground, the kind used for tying horses. Except this one was inside, and the wall it was bolted to faced east toward the morning sun. Silas touched it. The metal was warm from the day's heat. He could see scratches around the base where rope had pulled against it, over and over, for weeks. He went to the barn, got a crowbar and a hammer, came back and pried the ring out of the wall. Took him 20 minutes. The bolts were sunk deep. But he kept working, methodical, until the ring came free with a shower of adobe chips and dust. He carried it outside, added it to the pile, then he built a pyre. Used scrap wood from the barn, kindling from the woodshed. Arranged it carefully behind the chapel, away from the buildings. Set the rope in the center, the iron ring on top, the leather tools, the books. Stood back, looked at it. Not enough. He went back inside. Started pulling down Cade's scripture verses from the walls. Every handwritten condemnation, every justification for pain, every verse twisted into a weapon. Tore them all down and added them to the pyre. Then he waited. For dawn. For the right light. For witnesses. He woke on the porch before sunrise. Hadn't meant to sleep. Just sat down for a minute and... Hoofbeats. Silas stood. Looked toward the road. 2 riders coming in the gray, pre-dawn. One tall, one small. A mule trailing behind, his breath caught. Delgado and Emmy. They rode into the yard slowly, stopped 20 feet from the porch, neither dismounted. Delgado spoke first. "We heard you sent Cade away." Silas nodded, couldn't trust his voice. Emmy wanted to come back. Delgado's tone was carefully neutral. Not to stay, just to see. See what? Emmy spoke. First time he'd heard her voice in days. The chapel? Silas looked at her. Really looked. She was thinner, if that was possible. But her eyes were clearer, steadier. Her sleeves were short now, wrists visible, scars catching the dawn light. She wasn't hiding anymore. "I need to see it gone," Emmy said quietly. "I need to know it can't hurt anyone else." Silas's throat tightened. "It won't. I promise." "Promises aren't enough." Her voice wasn't cruel, just true. "I need to see." He nodded, gestured toward the back of the chapel. "Come on, then." They dismounted. Delgado stayed close to Emmy, protective. They followed Silas around the building to where the pyre stood waiting. Emmy stopped when she saw it, stared at the rope coiled in the center. "Is that—" "Yes." She moved closer. Delgado led her, but watched Silas carefully. Emmy stood in front of the pyre, looking at the rope, the iron ring, the leather strap, all the instruments of her pain, gathered and ready to burn. "When?" she asked. "Now, if you want." She looked at him then, direct, searching his face for something. He didn't know if she found it. Silas struck a match, held it. "You should do it," he said to Emmy. She stepped back. "No." "It's yours to burn." "No." Her voice was firm. "You let it happen. You end it." He looked at her, nodded, touched the match to the kindling. The fire caught fast. Dry wood, desert air. Flames climbed quick, eager. Smoke rose thick and black as the rope began to burn. They stood in silence, all 3 of them, watching. The iron ring glowed red in the heat, the books curled and blackened. The leather tools cracked and split, the rope burned slowest, fighting until the end. Emmy watched it all. Didn't cry, didn't speak. Just stood there with her arms wrapped around herself, sleeves pushed up, scars visible, bearing witness. Then, the chapel bell rang. Single sharp note, wind had caught it. Emmy flinched, whole body jerking like she'd been struck. The bell rang again. Silas saw her face go white, saw her pull her arms tighter, saw 7 months of terror flood back in an instant. He moved, walked straight to the chapel, climbed up the exterior steps to the bell tower, found the rope that controlled the bell, cut it. The rope fell. The bell went silent. He climbed back down. Emmy was staring at him. "It won't ring anymore," he said. "Not unless someone wants it to, not as a call, not as a command, just silent." Emmy's eyes filled. She didn't wipe them. Delgado put a hand on her shoulder. She leaned into him slightly. They turned back to the fire. The rope was almost gone now, just ash and smoke and memory. "Thank you," Emmy said, voice barely above a whisper. "Don't." Silas's voice was rough. "Don't thank me. I'm not thanking you for before." She looked at him. "I'm thanking you for now." He wanted to say something. Couldn't find words that weren't hollow. "I can't undo it," he managed finally. "I know. But I can stop it. Make sure it doesn't happen again." He stopped, started over. That's all I got left. Emmy was quiet for a long moment. Then, sometimes mercy is just stopping. The words hung in the air. She turned, started walking toward the horses. Delgado followed, paused when he reached Silas. You did right, finally. Too late. Yeah. Delgado looked back at the fire. But better late than never doing it at all. They mounted up. Emmy sat her horse, looking at the chapel one last time. Then at Silas. Goodbye, Senor Hardin. Goodbye, Emmy. They rode out. Silas watched them go until they were just shapes on the horizon, then gone. He turned back to the fire. It was dying now. Embers and ash. The rope was gone. The ring was slag. The tools were cinders. All that remained was smoke, rising up into the dawn sky. And then, rain. First drops in 4 months. Cold and clean, hitting his face, his hands, the hot ashes with a hiss. He stood there. Let it fall. Didn't move. The rain came harder, steady, washing the smoke from the air, cooling the embers, soaking into the drought-cracked earth. Too late to save the crops, but not too late to clean. Silas looked at his hands, covered in ash and dirt and rain. He'd never be clean. Not really. Not from this. But he could try. Could spend whatever time he had left making sure that chapel stayed empty. That no child ever stood where Emmy stood. That no rope ever bound what shouldn't be broken. It wasn't redemption, just responsibility. And maybe, if he was lucky, that would be enough. The rain fell harder. He stood in it until the fire was completely out. Then he went inside. The lamp on the porch stayed dark. 6 months later, the lamp on his porch burned again. But this time, he wasn't looking for ghosts. Winter came late to Arizona, first real cold in 6 months. Silas sat on the porch at dusk, lamp burning beside him. Not the same lamp, that one he'd put away. This was different, smaller, burned quieter. He wasn't searching anymore. Just sitting, being present, watching the day end. The chapel was gone. He'd torn it down 3 months back. Used the wood for fence repair, nothing left but foundation stones and empty ground. Better that way. Hoofbeats on the road. 2 riders coming in the fading light. Silas stood slowly, recognized them even at distance. Delgado and Emmy. They rode into the yard, stopped at the porch edge. Emmy looked different, face fuller, color in her cheeks, hair longer, braided back. She wore a coat against the cold, sleeves visible beneath. The scars were still there, always would be, but she didn't hide them anymore. Evening, Delgado said. Evening. Silas's voice was steady. Wasn't expecting you. We were passing through. Delgado glanced at Emmy. She wanted to stop. Emmy dismounted, stood at the bottom of the porch steps looking up at Silas. You okay? He asked. Getting there. She paused. Can I sit? Course. She climbed the steps. Sat where she used to sit, far into the porch, back against the post. Delgado followed, stood leaning against the railing. Long silence. Comfortable, though. The kind that didn't need filling. Maria still here? Emmy asked. Yeah, she'll want to see you. In a minute. Emmy looked at the empty space where the chapel had been. You really tore it down. I did. Good. More silence. Then Emmy reached into her coat pocket, pulled out the wooden bird. Silas's breath caught. You kept it. You left it on my pillow. Figured you meant for me to have it. She turned it over in her hands, wings still crooked, wood worn smooth. I kept it close, reminded me that someone gave a damn, even if it was late. She set it on the railing between them. Delgado said you sent money, she said, to the mission where we've been staying. Wasn't enough. You know, it was something. Emmy looked at him, direct. More than you had to do. Had to do all of it. Should have done it sooner. Yeah. No anger in her voice, just truth. You should have. They sat with that. You said you heard me, Emmy said quietly. Both times. Silas's hands tightened on his knees. Yes. And you walked away. Yes. Why? He'd thought about this answer for 6 months, practiced it. But now, facing her, only the truth came out. I was scared. My daughter died, and I couldn't save her. When you screamed, I thought, if I opened that door, I'd have to care. And if I cared, I might lose you too. So He stopped. Couldn't finish. So you let me burn instead. Yes. Emmy was quiet for a long time. Then, I forgave you before I left. I told Maria to tell you. She did. You believe it? Silas looked at her. I don't understand it, but yeah, I believe you. Good. Emmy stood, picked up the wooden bird, held it for a moment, then offered it to him. Here. That's yours. Oh, I know, but I want you to keep it. She pressed it into his hand. So you remember. Remember what? That you stopped, that you can't undo it, but you ended it. She paused. That's more than most people do. Silas's throat tightened. He looked at the bird in his palm, then at Emmy. You forgave me, he said, voice rough. I'll spend the rest of my life learning how. Emmy almost smiled. Yeah, you will. She turned, started down the steps, stopped, looked back. Goodbye, Senor Hardin. Goodbye, Emmy. She walked to her horse. Delgado helped her mount, then swung onto his own. They rode out into the winter dusk. Silas watched until they disappeared, then looked at the wooden bird in his hand, wings crooked, wood worn from being held, being kept close, being needed. He set it on the small table beside the lamp. The lamp burned steady, not searching, just light. The windmill turned slow against the stars. The desert stretched quiet and cold and clean, and Silas Hardin sat in the silence, holding the weight of what he'd done and what he'd learned, knowing some things can't be fixed, only carried forward.